My name is Thorsten Overgaard. I'm a Danish photographer. I travel the world taking photographs and teaching workshops. Today I will talk about which lens you are. So if you could imagine that you would have only one lens, then which lens would it be? And the reason that is an interesting question is that it's very easy to just have one lens. Usually when I travel around the world, I have basically 50mm lenses with me. I have more than one, but I could actually just have one lens. And I have a lot of lenses and I have tried a lot of lenses, but if I should pick one lens, it would be a 50mm. And here on the Leica SL2 I have a 50.95, so it has a very dreamy look, and of course I can take pictures in low light, but mainly it's the dreamy look with narrow depth of field that I like about it. It's a very, you could say, artistic lens, so I used it a lot. I take thousands of photos with this one. And then I have another 50mm here, and that's a 51.4. That's the Summilux Leica. This is the limited edition or special edition. It's like brass and it's like looks like old 50s lens. It doesn't have to be. The straight one is very beautiful industrial design of the outside of the lens. But the interesting thing is the actual glass in the lens in this one. And this is an amazing lens. It's very compact. It's probably the lens that have the best balance on a Leica M camera. It's very detailed, very sharp and clear, very natural colors. And at the same time, because it's a 1.4, it has depth of field. So if you shoot at 1.4, the background becomes very dreamy. And this particular lens has something, the way that it handles the light, so the background becomes, especially in black and white, the background becomes very silky, smooth, smoky. The Noctilux is different because it kind of explodes in light, and it's like, it's almost out of control, but it's actually not out of control. And that's the beauty of that lens. And you could say this one would be a great one to take if you just have one lens and you want to be able to take high quality photos that you can crop and where you have the sharpness and everything. This one would be a great one to take. But that's me. I have a lot of, I have quite a few 50mm lenses. I have the 50, 1.1, 790 also. There's a very interesting lens for portrait. It's not great for street or anything else because it's not high quality lens, but it's a lens that makes very exploding light and everything. So that's a very interesting lens. And then just here on the table also I took this is the Leica Q2 monochrome. So it's a black and white camera. You can also get it in color, the Leica Q2. And it has a fixed 28 1.7mm lens. So that's a very wide look. But let us try to narrow down what lens are you. And I can say, because when people ask, I'm about to buy a Leica camera and I should pick a lens, which one should I pick? Then it's actually very simple, because either you're 35 or you're 50mm. You might be the 5-10% that falls outside that you're a different one, but most people are 35mm or 50mm. So it just simply means that's the lens that you think with the most natural. And if we look at the history of Leica, the Leica M camera here has been around for 100 years. And the first Leica came out with a fixed lens and was a 50mm lens. So the whole Leica camera, the rangefinder here, that you look for this one and it measures via this one, and there's a focusing mechanism inside the camera here. It's very mechanical, amazing. They made that almost 100 years ago. So everything about the Leica is made for 50mm. And you could say 50mm could be, you could say it's a natural choice because the eye's size ratio is 50mm. So it means we'll see, I can see my hands out here, so that's about 8mm. It's almost like a fish eye. But what I look at is in focus. When I look at something outside the window there, that thing is in focus and the stuff around is blurred. The stuff in front and behind is also blurred. So that's very much like a lens sees it. Ansel Adams, the great landscape photographer, said it very well, because he said that you have to train the eye, because he would climb up on a mountain and he would have 3 glass plates with him, and then he would prepare for that exact moment, that exact time of year where he wanted to take that photo with his big camera. So he had 3 photos, like 3 shots, 3 glass plates, and what he would do, he would stop down so everything was razor sharp, like in the front and the back, the sides, everywhere. And that's what happens when you stop down a lens. Everything is razor sharp and detailed. And what Ansel Adams said is that you have to train that when you look at a photo, everything is sharp. But when you look at the landscape, that's not how it is. So you have to be able to see the difference between what the lens will see and what you will see. I mostly shoot my lenses, I photograph with my lenses wide open. So the 1.4 I shoot 1.4, the 50.95 I shoot 0.95. Even when I shoot with the Q2, the 28mm lens, it's 1.7. So that means that I can have selective focus, I can focus on something, and that helps me to direct the viewer to see this is the person you're supposed to look at, and the rest is just atmosphere, it's blur. I could also have a different strategy that I said, I'm going to have a lens that I stop it down, so everything in front, everything in the picture is razor sharp. But that's just not how I think. I think when I see pictures, I see a 50mm frame, I can isolate this, and I see I can focus on this person, I can blow out the background, or I can move over here so I get a longer background so I can blow out the background even more. So that's just how I got used to thinking, or you could say, if I look back at my photography, that's how I always thought, and I just found out, okay, this is the lens that fits for me. And back to the story, the Leica came out first with the 50mm, and then later Leica added 35mm lenses. And actually through the 50s, 60s, maybe also the 70s, 35mm became the most sold lenses. So originally Leica was 50mm, but then when the 35mm came out, it was just very popular. My personal theory is that people they want to have as much megapixel today as they can get, and they want to have as many features as they can get. And it's a little bit the same with the lens. You get a 35mm, you can shoot wider. It's like the iPhone today can go really wide, because then anything you see when you travel, you can have in the picture. You don't have to select just a narrow thing. I think it's a little bit different, because when you are a photographer and you're an artist, you make photographs, you're actually selecting that this is the frame I want you to see. And that's part of making the photo. I said, no, it's just this. I don't care about everything else. I just want this. And for me, it's 50mm. But 35mm was very popular. And you could say there's a lot of Leicas that was used by the White House photographers. A lot of the Leicas was used in war photo in the Vietnam and so on, and a lot of news and reportage photo. And news and reportage photo is almost like, yeah, it makes sense that you have 35mm, so you don't miss anything, and then you can crop into the scene you want later. If you're doing a demonstration or something, you have the wider view, and then you can crop in if you have to, or you just have a wider view. One of the things that comes with when you go wide is that of course everything becomes smaller. And one of the ways to use a wide lens like the 28mm, a lot of people think, why doesn't Leica come with like a Q2 or Q3 with a 50 or 35mm lens, because that would be more the thing. But Leica decided for 28mm, and one of the reasons they did it is that the size of this lens have to fit this camera. It had to be compact, and that's also why it's a 1.7. Because it was a 1.4, it would be a bigger lens, so they said no, 1.7. And also something about the digital shutter and everything in the camera is that if it's a 1.7, then you can actually stay within the range and have correct exposure even in high sunshine and so on. So there's a lot of things that went into this. So then what Leica added, this little camera is a 47 megapixel camera. I mean, it's unreal, but it is. The lens is razor sharp, very detailed, you could say, very good control of colors. It doesn't matter because this is the monochrome version, but in the color version, the colors are really high clarity. But what Leica did is they added a button here so you can change the crop that the camera takes from 28 to 35 to 50 or to 75mm. So if you set it, for example, you press 4 times, you get to 75mm frame. So you actually see 28mm view inside the viewfinder, but you also see an outline of 75mm. So when you take the photo, you only take the 75mm. And when you open the photo in Lightroom or Capture One on the computer after, you only see 75. But then the funny thing is, when you click on Crop Tool, then you see the full 28mm frame. So you can actually move your 75mm frame around. You can change it to back to 28 or 35, whatever. So they have a lot of possibilities. I think it's kind of genius. It's a little bit hard to sell people the idea that you get a 47 megapixel sensor and then you crop it down, so now you have an 8 megapixel photo. it's basically enough, but somehow when we buy a 47 megapixel camera, we want 74 megapixel pictures. So that's like, you could say, a new way of dealing with it. And maybe this could be a compromise, I would say, if you don't have a Leica, or you don't know, you're looking to get a new camera, check out the Leica Q2, and also the second-hand Leica Q, the previous version, is a genius compact camera that has everything. It's really thought through, and mainly it's simple to use, and it has a size you can actually carry it around with you. So it's a kind of genius camera. It is also, I should warn, if you get a Leica Q, within 2 weeks you're gonna dream about the Leica M, the Leica SL2, and all the other lenses. So then it's not like you're actually gonna save a lot of money on it, but it's a good place to start because it makes it simple. It has only one lens with this little detail that is so high resolution that you can crop it. So that's basically the story of lenses. But then we get into what lens are you? And one way to do it is you look back at the photos you have taken through your life, and you see, no matter if you used a zoom or if you used a this or that lens, or even an iPhone, you can look, are you a 50 or you're a 35mm person? Maybe you're 28, maybe you're 75, but most likely you're 35 or 50, and that is the lens you pick. And I would always pick a 50 or a 35 or a 28. I would never get a zoom. Zoom sounds great, you can do everything with it, but the problem is that what you're trying to do when you walk around with a camera, you're trying to develop an eye for photography. And part of that is that you know you have 50s, you kind of look at the world around you, what is 50mm? And that's how it works for me. I walk down the street and I see a photo, and I actually already see it's a 50mm frame, and I know if it's upright or if it's landscape, and I know what I'm going to focus on, and I know how blurred out the background is going to be. I already know. I don't necessarily think in black and white or color, I just think in light and atmosphere. And then later when I edit, these days I actually make a color and a black and white version, and they both go into the archive, because maybe down the road I want to use a color photo, or for that specific thing I need a black and white. So I edit both, but that is what happens. You could say there's two things. One thing is you carry a camera, you always have a camera with you, and it should be across the chest here, so it hangs here by the hip, and it should be on. Most cameras you can set it so it turns off after 2 minutes automatically, but you walk with the camera and you don't necessarily have a plan to take any photos, but you just walk to buy toothpaste or have a coffee or meet a friend or something like that, or maybe you walk to school or work. You have the camera with you, and just the thing that you have a camera, it helps you see pictures. And the fact that you have a 28 or a 50 and you know how that lens works, that's the pictures you see. You don't see 400mm photos or 21mm landscape photos or macro photos or something. You see what you usually see with your lens. So that's the trick of picking one lens, and it's a great thing to do. And if you don't believe that you have a built-in, of course you can train to use 28, or you could train to use 35, or you could train to, there's photographs that even use 135mm lenses, so it's very, you could say it's almost like macro on a long distance. And it's very interesting to walk around with a 135mm lens and you see different things. It's also interesting to walk around with a macro camera. This one actually has built-in macro. You just turn the ring here and you have a macro camera. It's very interesting to play with macro, because suddenly you see textures and details that you wouldn't normally see. But even walking around with a 50 or 35, you will actually see things that you don't see if you don't have a camera. If you're just driving a bicycle or a car, you look for green light and red light and things to watch out for. If you go shopping, you look for signs for 50% off and things that you would like to have. When you walk with a camera, you see pictures, and that's the whole point. And you do have a natural way of looking at things, just like the subjects you would photograph, or if you like colors, or you like people, or whatever you like, the same way you have a focal length. And I like to look at painters. It's fun to look at painters and see what focal length did they paint, because they actually did paint in a focal length. And I made a list here, and you will see the photos. So one photo I have, it's a rather new photo, is the signing of the American Constitution, but of course it's a photo about back when they did it. But that photo is a wide angle photo. It's a 28mm, maybe even 24mm. And one of the things you will see there is that it has to be, because it's a big painting. It's hanging in Washington. It's a big painting, and there's a lot of important people that have to be in the painting, and they also have to have almost the same size, all of them. So normally you would say if you shoot wide angle or 28, you would move in close to like the center of attention, like some people talking or something, and then you have a lot of background behind that might be out of focus, but in any case, even if it's in focus, everything is going to be smaller. So you have 2 or 3 large persons in the foreground, and then you have a lot of small things in the background. So it tells the story, the context, but it's not the center of attention. But you can also use a wide angle lens for landscape, or like for this painting, like the signing of the American Constitution, where you just have to pack a lot of people inside a big room and tell that story. If you look at Leonardo da Vinci, he was often 40 millimeters. You look at Picasso, he was often 50 millimeters, sometimes a tendency to 70, 80 millimeter. Vermeer, he was 35 millimeter, I would say, straight out all the time, but and that's one thing that's important when you have a wide angle lens, is that when you hold the camera upright, so that means you hold the camera like this, then you're going to have straight lines in the walls. As soon as you tilt the camera a little bit, then the lines are going to fall, and that's one of the things that you can say it can be a blessing or a curse of a wide angle lens, is that you get all this action of falling lines and stuff going here and there. As soon as you turn the camera a little bit, everything goes like a little bit crazy. If you want to do action and want to show that a lot of stuff is happening, then that's great. Else, if you want to have it a little bit more tight, you go 50 millimeter or 80 millimeter or something like that. A Danish painter, Krøyer, he is 50 millimeter mostly. Sometimes he went even more tight with 80 millimeter. We have John Ellered, he is 28 millimeter. And then the last one I had here was Grant Wood, and he's like 50, sometimes 90 millimeter. So it's very interesting to look at paintings, but also for you, it's interesting to look at the photos you did take and the photos where you thought, wow, this is really me, I made something that works for me. And then you look at what focal length. That's going to point to what lens, if you had just to pick one lens, which one should it be? So very simply, if we summarize, it's like 35 or 50. If we talk like an M, and we often do, then do you want a 35 millimeter? If you're 35 millimeter, do you want a 2.0 or do you need a 1.4 lens? And the rule is basically 1.4 is more open, you can shoot in lower light, but mainly you have more depth of field and more play with light. And the general rule is that if you go from 2.0 to 1.4, the price doubles. The same in 2.0 or in 50 millimeter, you have a 2.0, you can also get 2.8, but 2.0 or 1.4 or 0.95. And basically the price goes 2.0 to 1.4, they double. And you go 0.95, it almost doubles once again. So yeah, so sometimes I have people, they try to economize, so I just get a 35 2.0 because I'm not that great, I don't need an awesome lens. And then they had it for a month or 6 months, and every day they had it, they dreamt about the 1.4. So you could say, if you know that you want a 1.4, then just go get the 1.4 to begin with, maybe get a second hand or something, or just know that that's the direction you're going. You don't have to make any excuses. It's between you and yourself and maybe your camera dealer, what lenses you pick. I think that was all I had to say today. I mean, of course, I can talk forever about lenses. There's a lot of characteristics of different lenses, and maybe I should do a 50 millimeter talk for a few hours about all the 50 millimeters that I've used and that I love. But that will be another day. This was all I had to say today. If you go below the video, there's a link to a free ebook and links to some of my articles. And thank you for watching. Until I see you next time, remember to always wear a camera.